Welcome friends for tips and tricks for research writing. So as we have covered two lectures in this series, we are here with lecture series number 3, which is on title, keywords and legends. So myself, Professor Anshula Deshpande, I'm here with you to discuss on title, keywords and legends for your research writing. As you all know, we had covered in first lecture the literature search and how to use Pico for your literature search. The second lecture was to discuss reference and citation. And today I'll be talking on title and keywords, legends for tables and figures. So let's begin. So before I begin, I would extend my gratitude to my guide, Professor Dr. Shobha Tandon and Professor Hemchandra Pradhan. So with their blessings, let us begin. Title, as you all know, it summarizes the main idea or ideas of your study. So keeping this in mind, let us see what are the intended learning objectives of this lecture. First is to understand elements of research title. Second would be keyword creation on demand. Third is points to remember for figure and table legends. And fourth is how to comply your graph according to requirements. So let's begin. As you all know, there is a famous quote, it's all in the name. And that's why academic writing is a serious and deliberate endeavor, because when we are writing, the title of our study brings the seriousness to our endeavor. So, as you all know, title is used to identify the work, to place it in context, to convey a minimal summary of its contents, and to pique the reader's curiosity. So, it identifies the work and should bring readers' curiosity in your title, because this is the first thing which anyone reads for your research. So for this, to go ahead with title, we should be very clear that what is our research question. So the first trick is parameters to be used to formulate a suitable research paper title. So there are various parameters. The first being, you should know the purpose of the research, the scope of the research, and third is the methods used to study the problem. So based on this, we'll go ahead. The initial aim of a title is to capture the reader's attention and to highlight the research problem under investigation. So let's create a working title. So at this stage, just create a working title for your research, and for that, the mantra is KISS. What is it? Keep it simple and searchable. So when we are formulating our title, let us keep it simple and searchable. Distinguish the paper from others on a similar topic, because you are doing a research maybe. Catch the reader's attention and interest by stating how your study is different from others. So that element should come in your title. Match search queries so people will find your paper and cite it. As search and electronic publishing becomes more and more important in research, I have come to believe that the last point, that is search, may indeed be the most important one. So think of it as SEO, that is search engine optimization, for your research vision. And if it is not fitting to SEO, your title may not find many users. The second tip is to understand the characteristics of final title. So let's see what are the characteristics of the final title. It should indicate accurately the subject and scope of the study. Rarely use abbreviations or acronyms unless they are commonly known. Use words that create a positive impression and stimulate reader interest. Fourth is use current nomenclature from the field of study. So your title should have the terminologies which are in consistency with your field of work. Identify key variables, both dependent and independent in your experimental studies or research work. Suggest a relationship between the variables which supports the major hypothesis. And usually, the hypothesis of any research is to see the associations and the cause and effect of the medicines, the drugs, or whatever intervention is being applied. Seventh point is limited to 15 to 25 substantive words. Your final title should not be more than this. Takes the form of a declarative statement. So, your title should be like a declaration statement that you are declaring something. Use correct grammar and capitalization with all first words and last words capitalized, including the first word of a subtitle. And yes, keep this in mind that all nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs that appear between the first and last words of the title are also capitalized. And the last point, rarely use an exclamation mark at the end of the title. The third tip is research title versus running title. So most of the time when we submit our research proposal, most of the journals they ask for research title as well as running title. So let us understand what is the difference between the two, or is it the same? Avoid using humorous or clever journalistic styles of phrasing when you're writing a research title. A research title can have 15 to 20 words, but usually not more than 25 words. So here you can see this is an example of a research title which talks about the variables used, which is the varnish and CPP-ACP and tricalcium phosphate. It has been compared for remineralization potential, and they have mentioned the type of study. Now let's see what is running title. You can use humorous or clever journalistic styles of phrasing for running title. It is usually limited to 10 words and you can make it catchy, whereas research title should not be made catchy one. How to make it catchy? Titles that contain a colon, don't force it. But if a two-part description of your paper fits well into an idea colon description, this is the template which you can follow. So this template will help you to formulate a catchy or a running title. So idea can be the first part before colon, and then description, a little description of that idea following the colon. So here you can see comparative evaluation of remineralization potential of two varnishes was the running title given by the authors in this research title. So let's go more into understanding the catchy title. What not to do. It's probably a bad idea to choose a provocative title alone. For instance, what are the ants doing? It would be a bad one. But what are the ants doing? Then your question mark followed with vision based tracking and reconstruction of control programs. So this is a good example to convert your question following with what you are trying to do or how you are going to track the working of the ants or what they are doing will generate a curiosity in the reader's mind and will make your title catchy. So it is great because it is both catchy, provocative, and also explanatory. So, tips for writing an effective research paper title. Many universities require that titles take a very specific form, limiting your creativity when it is research title. Make sure your research title describes topic, method, sample, and results, or what results you are looking for in your study. You can use the following formula for this. So the first section is outcome, that is evaluation or comparison for study of topic among the sample, a in vitro study, so an or experimental study, that will follow the method. So this is the template which you can use, the formula template for preparing your research title. Example is psychosocial effects of drug A on schizophrenia patients, a multi-center randomized control trial. So the method of study design comes in the end. Now I would suggest you to use PICOT. PICOT, because when we started with our research question, we started with PICO. So PICOT will help you to formulate your final research title. How it will help you? So let us just go back and recapitulate what does PICOT stands for. P is usually population or the problem which we are studying. It can be characteristics, age, gender, ethnicity, health issues. Intervention is, for example, the drugs or the setting or the geographic which we are trying to look for. C stands for comparison, with whom we are comparing. So usually it is a gold standard. For example, it can be no intervention or common practice or the common things or the drugs or the materials used to compare. Outcome is what we are looking for in that research. What are the variables or the parameters which we are going to assess? Then type of study, like the type of questions or the experimental or the research design of the study stands for T here, that is type of study. So these are the 5 question types which usually the research will fall into. The first research type would be intervention type or the issue of interest. It is used to determine which treatment leads to the best outcome. Prognosis or prediction type. So it is used to determine the clinical course over time and likely complications of a condition. So if we are exposed to certain etiological factors, like for example, consumption of tobacco, and then over time, what will be the prediction to the complications of its use? So then it becomes a prognosis or prediction type. The third is diagnosis or diagnostic test. In many times in medical sciences or in health sciences, we have diagnostic research as well, where we are using 2 or 3 diagnostic tests to determine which test is more accurate in diagnosing or analyzing a situation or condition. The fourth type is etiology. It is used to determine the greatest risk factors or causes of a condition. And the fifth is meaning. When we are seeking for meaning, and usually this is done in social sciences, it is used to understand the significance of an experience for an individual, group, or community. So usually these are the 5 types of studies which we will be having, and based on which category our research fits into, we have a template. So I will share the template with you where it is stated that how it can be converted into your research title. Below is given the reference for this. So for further reading, you can refer this for PICOT question. So for intervention, this is the template. In P is your population. How does compare to affect within the type of study? So for prognosis, this is, so basically it follows PICOT. PICOT. So if you will replace your PICOT of your research question in the similar order, that is PICOT, you will be very easily able to formulate your research title. Note that in template proposed here, time you can replace with your type of study when you are formulating your research title. Whereas when we are searching for best evidence, this T gets replaced with time period. So, but here we are formulating the research title, so T will stand for type of study. So let us frame title using PICOT. So this is the trick how to frame it. So this was the research question. So the research question was, are CPP, ACP and fluoride varnish effective in remineralizing incipient carious lesion? So now let us convert it into a title based on PICOT. What type of question is this? So here I have replaced P, I, C, O in the research question. Now T stands for type of study. So what about T? Now we design our research methodology based on what parameters and how we are going to study. It can be in vitro experimental study, which can be done on extracted tooth. It can be done on the patients. So it can become an experimental design. So how you wish to do the experiment has to be the T. So has to be experimental because we want to find now what type of experiment. It can be in vitro, case control, or you can conduct a randomized clinical trial. So this will replace your T with whatever you decide for. So now let us see in this the already published title. Here you can see this stands for P or O, that is evaluation of remineralization, followed with INC, that is intervention and comparison, and T is for type of study, which is the quantitative method. So this is how you can choose your, so this is another example. Here you can see that how it can be done. So here you can see again it is P, I, O and C and then T. So this is how you can frame. Now just because you know my name doesn't mean you know my story. So maybe just the title is not enough. And that's why there is a role of keywords. Because many times the important terms which are part and you wish people to have search based on that is to give a keyword. So that's why role of keywords becomes very important. So let us decide how to create your keywords. Now, a tip over here is you can use mesh on demand, which is again medical subject headings, which is when you will Google mesh on demand, you will get this and you can click on mesh on demand and go to the NLM or PubMed site. NLM site gives you the keywords or the subject headings on the demand. And for this, the tip is keep following sections of your research work handy. What are this? Your research question, which we had formulated earlier, hypothesis, which you wish to check in your study, objectives of your study which you have framed, and the fourth is the methodology which you have planned to use in your study. So these are the four things which you have to keep handy when you are going for mesh on demand. So let's begin. So I have taken this article for example to demonstrate where we will work on mesh on demand. So this is the article which I have chosen for this, where they have used white spot lesions. So let's go and use the research question or hypothesis which was given in this article. So the aim of the study or the research question, the hypothesis which they had mentioned was chosen and placed on mesh on demand. So this is the search bar or the search page which opens on mesh on demand. When you will open here in search this box, you can just copy and paste your hypothesis or the content and then click on search. So once you have pasted your hypothesis or your aim, you can just click on search, and here you see the mesh terms are available. So you get PubMed or Medline mesh terms here. So this will help you to select or choose the terminologies which are acceptable. The next thing, so you can see here the mesh terms which we have is fluorides, toothpaste, full form of CPP, ACP, caseins, paint, dental caries. So based on your research methodology, you can choose the keywords which are there in the mesh terms. Now, you may have a doubt that white spot lesion and incipient caries or initial caries, what are the terminologies which are used for this? So when I click on this, the terminologies which are matching to white spot lesion in their directory will become red. So this shows that if I choose white spot lesion, so what are the mesh terms which are matching to these terminologies? So here we can see here dental caries, diagnosis or oral is the term. So now let's move to legends. An effective legend is the key to help a figure stand alone. So basically, if you are shown a figure with the legend, it should be self-explanatory. That is what has to be understood. So let's see the tips for what is a legend in a figure. Legends or captions explain figures, tables, or images in the manuscript. The title should describe what the figure is about, and the methods include all the necessary details to understand the figure without referring back to the body of text. So that is the main idea. Your legend should make the reader understand about your figure without going back to your text. So keep the legends consistent with the body text of the research. Now again, there is a confusion for many that what is a legend, what is a caption. The term legend is used to describe information in charts, for example, to identify time series. The term caption is used to identify or describe an entire chart or some other graphical content or table. Both terms are usually effectively considered as titles or synonym to it, but the aim is to present data visually to make readers understand technical information and the context in an easy way. So with the same, let us see what is it. So in short, captions or legends should narrate a story. Captions should be self-explaining and should provide sufficient information to the readers without referring to the related text in the manuscript. It should include information on important aspects such as description, method or technique used, and the result obtained by the help of p-value or the statistics which were used. Captions should be written in a complete sentence. So you cannot give just points. It should be in a sentence form. Caption should contain the units of measurement representative of the data type, duration of the experiment, etc. So, in a nutshell, what are the points to remember when writing legends in your manuscript? Just let's see. First is place captions above the table and align to the left typically. So tables are read from the top down and should be numbered. For instance, table 1 followed with the legend. Place captions below the figure because they are usually the descriptions of your units or the statistical test. So the figures can be presented as graphs, images, or schematic diagram and are usually read from the bottom. So usually for figures, it is termed as the titles or the captions which starts from the bottom. Captions require a figure or table number, title, and other explanatory information as appropriate. Cite the data sourced from other publications within captions as appropriate. So if you have chosen or taken any diagrammatic or illustrations from any other source, please mention the source in the brackets and take prior permission. Now, how to avoid plagiarism in detail will be discussed in the next lecture. Have a clear understanding of the concept associated with the experiment, and that should be reflected through your legend or caption. Provide measured units of the data, include concentrations, average measurements, and significant values as appropriate to your research. So, let us have a look at examples of well-written legends for tables and figures. So, let's see an example. So, this is a table which tells the scores. Now, if this is a criteria which has been used from some other source, it should have the source below the table. This is another example. Here you can see the description of visual scores of 3 groups is given, and where what is these 3 groups, T0, T1, the time interval of observation, that description is given below. So here you can see the description of time interval, everything has been given as in caption below the table, as well as what is considered as significant and non-significant. So now let's compare. How is this? The legend, is it satisfactory? Is it an appropriate title, legend for the table? Here they have given a caption. Is it appropriate? No, it's not appropriate. Just giving the statistics as the title is not appropriate. This is not the legend. Let's see another example. Between the group comparisons of diagonodent scores at various time intervals of observation. And beneath they have given the time interval description and the significant. What does these NS stands for? So is this appropriate? Yes. So this is an appropriate way of presenting your legends for table. Now let's see an example. So the next component is the checklist to check your graphs are compliant. So we have finished with the legends and captions. Many times we have graphs also in our research and how to create our graphs and its captions. So here is the checklist. Things your graph should have is axis labels with units. You should mention your units in it. A white background, preferably when you are printing it for research or submitting it for journal. Maximum and minimum values so that the most of the space is filled. Large enough font to be readable. Things graph should not have is a title. The figures do not have titles. This information should go in the caption. Grid marks, avoid grid marks because your important data labels or the values on your graph may get missed. A border around the whole graph is usually not given when we are publishing it or sending it for publication in journal. Whereas if you are using it for your thesis or your dissertation work, give a border for better understanding. A legend unless absolutely necessary. Again, this information should preferably go in the caption, but again, every journal has their own this thing, but most of the times the legend goes as a separate identity. So let's see an example. So this is the legend of the figure given separately, and this is the graph. So this is an example of how it should be. So this becomes appropriate. Here the values are there. We should avoid, we can have data labels. So few things which you can add on is you have pH value. So the unit is given. Then pH value, then baseline, and the value. If data labels are given over here, it will be easier, but that's why they have here used the grid lines. So it appears very almost appropriate, gives a clear idea about the research groups, the interval, and what was studied. So the pH value was studied and 3 different time period or the situations when the readings were taken. So this was the example. With this, I thank you to going through this series of lecture on title, keywords, and legends. So just let's revise quickly what tips and tricks I have shared with you. The first one was parameters to formulate a research title, characteristics of final title, research title versus running title, how to frame title using Picot, how to decide your keywords, what is a legend in a figure, and points to remember while writing your legends. And the last is checklist to check your graph is compliant or not. So with this, I end this topic, and the following to this will be lecture series 4, where I will be discussing about how to write subsections, the tips and tricks to write subsections, and how you can avoid plagiarism, which is a very important section. So be tuned and follow the subscribe. So if you have any queries, you all can email your queries on the given below email ID. So thank you so much for attending this, and hope you are tuned with me for the next lecture. Thank you.